You know, when you're on a fire scene, your camera is probably one of your most important tools. But have you ever stopped to think that that same tool could be creating, well, false evidence without you even realizing it? We're about to dig into how simple things like light, angle, and shadow can completely change what you see, and more importantly, how to make sure your photos always tell the real story.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with what I call the photographic illusion, and then see it in action with some actual scene photos. After that, we'll break down the science of it all, the light and shadows. Then we'll talk about the huge risks of getting this wrong, lay out a rock-solid process for defensible documentation, and wrap it all up with the most important takeaway: documenting, not interpreting.
Okay, first up, let's get right to the heart of the problem. This isn't about some kind of fancy camera trick or a manipulated photo. It's about how the camera's single eye can, without any bad intent, totally mislead our own.
I know that sounds pretty dramatic, right? But it is absolutely true. Think about it. A single photograph, taken from just one angle, with one type of lighting, isn't really an objective record of reality. No, it's a two-dimensional interpretation of a three-dimensional scene. And if you rely on that one interpretation alone, you could build an entire hypothesis on a shaky foundation, sending your investigation down the wrong road right from the start.
So, enough with the theory. Let's move on and see how this actually plays out on the fireground. We're going to look at a real-world example. Okay, take a look at these two pictures. What you're seeing are the controls of a stove from a fire scene. Focus on those little metal posts where the knobs are missing. Now, here's the thing. These are two photos of the exact same stove taken just moments apart. But look closely. Do those posts really look like they're in the same position in both pictures?
Let's break down this first shot. This was taken with a direct on-camera flash, and notice the shadow it casts. It's a really hard shadow, and it falls straight behind the control post. To our eyes, this makes that post look perfectly centered, lined up exactly with the off position. If this was the only photo you had, you'd probably jot down "control is off" and move on. But now look at this. It's the same exact control post. Nothing was moved, nothing was touched. The only difference is the camera's angle and the lighting. And bam! The shadow has shifted to the side, and all of a sudden the post looks completely different. It looks offset, maybe even rotated a little bit, so you have one object, two photos, and two totally different potential conclusions.
So what in the world is going on here? Let's get into the technical side of things and break down exactly what's creating these visual tricks.
The first big concept is something called parallax. It's actually super simple. It's the same reason your car speedometer looks like it's pointing right at 60 to you, but to your passenger, it might look like it's on 58 or 62. Your point of view changes what you perceive. The same exact thing happens when you photograph a 3D object like a control knob. A tiny shift in your angle can change everything.
And then there's the lighting. This is a huge one. That standard on-camera flash just blasts light straight ahead, creating those harsh shadows we saw that could completely flatten an image in high detail. But oblique lighting, that's light coming from the side, is a total game changer. It casts shadows that actually reveal the shape, the texture, and the true 3D nature of an object. It gives you a way more accurate picture of what's really there.
And this all boils down to a really crucial point. A photograph is not a conclusion. All it is a record of how light bounced off an object from one perspective at one moment in time. It can't tell you about someone's intent, and it can't confirm if something was working or not. It's just a single data point.
Now, failing to understand that distinction, well, it comes with some serious professional consequences. Let's talk about the risk you're taking when you bet your case on a single, uncorroborated photo. The moment you look at that first photo and think, yep, it's off, you've just opened the door to investigator bias, and that can shape your entire hypothesis moving forward. If that first assumption is wrong, your credibility takes a hit, and your evidence can get torn apart easily and successfully where it matters most, in court.
And trust me, it will be challenged. In a courtroom, that photo becomes an exhibit. All a sharp defense attorney has to do is show that second picture or just explain the principles of parallax and lighting, and suddenly your definitive proof isn't so definitive anymore. They've just introduced reasonable doubt.
So, how do you protect your investigation? How do you make sure your photographic evidence is absolutely bulletproof? You do it by adopting a systematic approach. Let's build that protocol right now.
Here it is, your 5-step checklist. First, get the big picture established context. Second, take that direct 90-degree photo. But, and this is the key, don't stop there.
Third, you got to get multiple perspectives. Shoot it from the left, the right, above, and below. Fourth, for each of those angles, vary your lighting. Use the on-camera flash, then use a flashlight from the side. And finally, make sure everything is in sharp focus. This creates a complete set of data that leaves no room for ambiguity.
If you remember just one thing from this, make it this: one angle is no angle. A single photograph is basically an opinion. A series of photographs from multiple angles with different lighting, now that is defensible documentation.
And that brings us to our final and maybe most important guiding principle. It's really about a fundamental shift in how we should be thinking about our cameras on a scene.
So, here's the bottom line. Your job on the scene is not to take pictures that support a theory you might already have in your head. Your job is to use that camera as a data collection tool. You're there to create a fair, accurate, and objective record of the scene exactly as you found it. The interpretation, the analysis, that all comes later, once you have all the data in front of you.
So I'll leave you with this one question to ask yourself the next time you're on a fire scene, camera in hand. When your findings are on the line, when every single detail is being picked apart by opposing experts, attorneys, and a jury, will your photos stand up to that kind of scrutiny? Because ultimately, it's your process that determines the answer.